I was gonna do this long, pathetic, meandering rant about my past, but I decided to instead do this short one on just the camera here. Instead, I decided to do this short rant on uh, things that were much better back in the 90's than in the that in now. Um, I hear a lot people say that you shouldn't hang on to the past. You should move on, get on with your life. I don't believe in that. Um, what I do believe in going ahead, as far as not dwelling in the past. I don't believe in that because past is in a lot of ways is something that actually keeps you sane. Thinking about, and that's not just thinking about the good old days. It's also just thinking about, you know, how we haven't learned anything from the past, and a lot of times people don't remember the past to learn. Sometimes people remember the past um, to think back on better days. Um, I'm certainly one of those people who thinks that way. But it's one of those things where, what can you do? You can think about the past, but you can't bring it back, unfortunately. So here are 5 things that I believe were better back in 1990's than now. Um, One of them was, and I hate to say this because liberals are gonna hate me for this, but one of the things that was better were presidents, of course. I love Bill Clinton. You know, he was a man. Elvis, Baba, however you want to refer to him. Uh, you know, it's not that I don't like Obama. It's just that unfortunately he fell into something that we're still recovering from. I mean, something that situation that I think unarguably anyone would agree. We fell into a situation that's way worse than the recession of the early 90's after Bush lost second term to Clinton. I think a lot of times people would argue that it's far worse than the depression of the 30's. I couldn't disagree in certain ways. I mean, we're not standing per se, see half a city standing in a bread line, waiting for food, in spite of the fact that there's more news coverage than ever before. But it's really bad. I mean, if I had to put it, maybe it wasn't as bad as the depression of the 30's, but it was at least twice, if not worse, than the recession of the 90's, of the early 90's. That's why there's this. That's why there's been so much harder to recover from it. I mean, I'd say by 95, you know, we were on, definitely on our way to recover. Not that things haven't gotten better in certain ways. I mean, you know, numbers tell of how things have gotten better. Unfortunately, in spite of the fact that the numbers back up that we're recovering, a lot of people don't feel it. I certainly don't feel it. I mean, granted, my job history doesn't help, but I certainly don't feel the recovery. Right now, I'm unemployed. Like many Americans, I'm extremely depressed. I am looking for work, um, and I'm putting myself out there. I've done at least a couple of interviews, and nothing's really resulted out of it. Granted, I don't live, even though I live in Arizona, I don't live in a big city like Phoenix, which I probably would have a better chance to find work. I live in Tucson, but in spite of that, I I don't feel the recovery. I'm sorry to say this to the Obama supporters, but I don't feel it, and a lot of people agree. That's why, in spite of the fact that Obama's leading in the polls, there's still a lot of people. If you ask them, if you stop on the street, and I don't mean the people that probably are successful working, but the vast majority of people out there can tell you that they're not feeling the recovery. You know, um, so that's one thing that I miss is the Clinton days. Um, the other thing that I miss is the early days of gaming. And I know that things are better now as far as gaming is concerned. I can get it almost well, at least if I have a gold membership with Xbox 360, I can get into my Xbox and play. I can fire up my Magic the Gathering game and go online and play against somebody. But it seems for some reason that in spite of the fact that we have a lot of options when it comes to playing, it doesn't feel the same as back in the day. Um, Another thing that I miss about the 90's is the music. Um, the music used to be, and I know people are gonna say, well, every generation thinks that their generation was the best. Granted, that's true in certain ways, but and I think I've argued this in um, another YouTube video in the comments. I've argued that even kids from this generation, the young teens and stuff, not all, but there are plenty out there who go back to what their parents listened to, and then listen to the stuff that's out there now, and a lot of them agree that their parents' stuff is much better because it seems, and maybe it is cultural, maybe it is of the age, but it seems that the music from the 90's, at least to me, it connected in many ways. I mean, you know, I remember when I started listening to Marilyn Manson, Nine Inch Nails, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, um, you know, Social Distortion, Pantera, Um, then I sort of moved on. I listened to more heavy stuff, and then I discovered black metal and all that music that I still play. Believe it or not, I mean, I still have a collection of music in my computer. A lot of it going as far back as transferring from computer to computer back as far back as at least 2000. So, I mean, I love music, and there isn't much of anything that I can listen to from today that I like. That's why if you were to look at my collection of music, for example, you'd see a lot of it is um, 90's, and some from 2000. Um, but how much? Uh, Another thing that I liked from the 90's is, and this goes along with the whole music thing, is um, channels that actually used to be about what they were called. And this is a rant I made before, with the whole G4 thing. Um, that they shouldn't call themselves the gaming channel because they're nothing to do with gaming. And this goes out to also with this goes along with MTV. MTV used to be the music channel. Um, it used to be the channel that you go to for your videos. I understand because of technology, I can catch a video anytime I want on YouTube. And I'm not saying, I'm not ungrateful for the technology. I like the technology. But it seems to me that, if you at one point called yourself MTV and you showed videos, I understand. But if you're not showing the videos any longer, why hang on to the name? Why not change it? I know it's profitable and people look back at MTV for whatever reason, whether it's nostalgia or because they like certain reality shows. But to me, honestly, you know, there's no reason for you to call yourself MTV, in my opinion. I mean, if it were up to me, MTV would be reality TV and would drop the MTV moniker because you have very little to do with music, if anything. And the last thing that I miss from the 90's is um, and this goes along with what I said previously and earlier. Um, I could walk down the street and get a job, and this goes back to back to past the mid '90's. When not only were we recovered from the recession, but we were booming. And I understand that a lot of that boom had to do with new technology, um, but also it had to do with um, the tax rate being at what it was, with uh, infrastructures being paid. You'd have repairs done to roads and bridges. You'd have you know people. Yeah, you'd have a lot of people on welfare, but you had a lot of people that were going from welfare to work, and there was a lot of resources for people to start looking for a job and get out of the government dole. And a lot of people actually progressed and made something out of themselves because the opportunity was there. Nowadays, unfortunately, the opportunity, if it's there, I don't see it. I mean, back in the 90s, like I said, back in the 90s, I could walk on the street and get a job. You know, I can put out 100 applications. And I put up plenty, not that many, but I can put up 100 applications. If I get maybe a couple of interviews from them, you know, be happy. That's not the way it should be. It really, I mean, I understand people are gonna probably argue this or maybe leave some stupid plain comment, you know. But if you have anything that even resembles an intelligent argument as to whether or not this is the way things ought to be, I like to hear it because I don't see things, you know, being this way nowadays as some form of normalcy. I really don't because it doesn't feel normal that you have to pretty much scour every single corner of a city to get a job. You know, it doesn't feel normal the fact that in my last job I was earning much less than I was when I was a teenager working for a McDonald's, for crying out loud. Working for, I mean, that's gotta be the most sad and pathetic thing about this whole thing. And you know, back then, and this was actually the early 90s. This was after Clinton took over, and I was working. You know, I was working at a McDonald's. Granted, I was, you know, working full time. This was back after I turned 18, and I was working full time because I could. But I mean, seriously, I used to earn back then. I used to earn $200 a fucking week. I can't even earn. You know, I can barely earn that well, at least the last job I had, I could barely earn a little over that in 2 weeks. How pathetic is that? And it's not because I'm lacking, you know, it's not because I'm lacking the drive to work. I mean, that situation was hell on me. And it's hell on a lot of people that are still stuck there working. And it was hell for a lot of people that were working there. I know because I talked to those people. I mean, but now it just seems like um, I mean, you would think that um, there would be some kind of a adjustment to cost of living um, against, you know, what you're paid, so that at least you'll be able to earn enough to support yourself. But it's not like that anymore. You know, it's something's got to happen because people are going nuts, and I know a lot of people who are this way. I mean, there's more homelessness that there ever was in the Reagan years. There is, you know, there are more poor people than ever been in the last 30 years. Part of it has to do with the fact that, you know, Republicans have driven us to the point of, you know, well, Republicans have driven actually the middle class to near the point of extinction. And, you know, it doesn't help that there are a lot of corporate Democrats too that are supporting them. But the thing is that, and I want to wrap this up because it's getting to be a long meandering speech, um, which I was trying to avoid, but it seems that, you know, like I said, things were better back then, in spite of the fact this has been a rolling boulder going down the hill, and the people trying to escape it have been the American middle class. It's finally caught up to us. All of this effort to eliminate the middle class has finally caught up to us, and unfortunately, there is very little we can do because the people we elect, regardless of who we elect, it doesn't seem like you know it gets any better. It gets progressively worse. I mean, I don't know how worse does it has to be? Does it have to be? Does it have to be to the point where actually people revolt violently in this country? Does it have to get to the point where you know we just throw up our hands and just leave what we're able to? I mean, does America? I mean, in order for change, does America have to become a third world nation? I mean, some people would argue that we're already a third world nation, and we're not the superpower that we're supposedly were back 35, 35 years ago. I couldn't argue those people because look at what we are. Yeah, the people in power have a lot of the power and wealth, but the middle class was a big, huge block of the American experience has just become this tiny little insignificant pebble. You know, how many houses have gone to the banks? How many people have become homeless and poor? Well, I gotta say this, things were better back then, and I'm pretty sure things felt better back to other people back even before, and even before during the Carter years and the Nixon years. I mean, somebody like Nixon couldn't even get elected for dog catcher nowadays because he'd be looked at too liberal. Yeah, Nixon. But anyways, that's all. See.